I mean, I think one thing that I would say to everyone who's listening to us or watching us, Chris, like we've been talking a lot about teams and trust and managing and leading and all of that. And what I find the best leaders that I work with, Chris, who ultimately create the best teams, are also willing to do some of their own kind of introspection and tell them the truth. I mean, like you said earlier, no one's perfect. It's okay to have some blind spots or some challenges, but if we're constantly learning and growing, that's going to help the team learn and grow, and that's going to put us in the most authentic space to be able to lead the team in the direction we want to.
Welcome back, everybody. Chris G here, Hard Hat the CEO, and I'm glad you're here. Got a great guest today, and for my Missouri fans and listeners, got Mike Robbins. He used to play baseball for the Kansas City Royals back in 1995. Now, that was a while ago, but I'm sure he's better. Looking at him right now, he's much healthier than I am, so I'm sure he can play some ball still. That being said, we are going to talk about leadership today and how that's going to help you get to become a CEO of your business and your life. Please help me welcome Mike Robbins. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I appreciate being here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would, besides the fact you played a little baseball.
That was a big part of my life for many years. But yeah, I grew up out here in California where I still live. And I actually got drafted by the Yankees out of high school, Chris, but I didn't sign with the Yankees because I got a chance to go to college and play at Stanford, which is about an hour from where I grew up in Oakland. And then got a chance to pitch in the College World Series in 1995, which was the same year the Kansas City Royals drafted me, which was very exciting. And
yeah,
I signed a pro contract, and as you do in pro baseball, you got to go in the minor leagues. So I'm working my way up through the minor leagues, trying to get to the big leagues. And unfortunately for me, my third season still in the minors, I went out to pitch one night, threw one pitch, tore ligaments in my elbow. And that was pretty much, I mean, my career didn't end that night, but the season did. And then 2 years and 3 surgeries later, I had to walk away from baseball, and I was 25 and I had started when I was 7. So it's a pretty big life change at, kind of a pivotal time in life. But
back then, it's probably a good thing you went to college. Yeah. We can have that debate today about college or not, but back in the 90s, 80s and 90s, I was back then, it was just part of the deal. You had to go to college. So
yeah. No, I mean, I'm grateful. I got a good education, made a lot of great friends, and the baseball at Stanford in those days was fantastic. So it was a good decision for me. But when I got hurt, I was like, what am I going to do now? I mean, I'd gotten an education, but I hadn't really thought about any career.
Anything else, yeah.
So, I moved back home. It's the late 90s. I get a job working for a tech company because, I'm out here in the sort of tech hub of, San Francisco, Silicon Valley area. And, Chris, one of the things I had been most fascinated by when I was playing, I was disappointed, of course, when my career ended, but I was really fascinated, particularly by the time I got to college and was playing professionally. I was fascinated by team dynamics because I was on some teams sometimes where we had really good players, really good talent, but the team wasn't very good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, the coach was weird or guys had egos or whatever it was, we would underperform, which is super frustrating because, in sports, whether it's baseball or any other sport, if you have the best players, you should have the best team, right?
In theory, but it doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. Right. Anybody who follows any sport, you might notice at the season starts, you're all excited. And then you're like, how come our team's not as good as we should be on paper? But then on the flip side, I was on some teams sometimes where, the talent was decent and the team was fantastic. Like we would beat other teams that had better players than we did. Like my junior year at Stanford, some of our best players got hurt early in the season and we were playing pretty poorly, even when they were healthy. And then they get hurt and we kind of rallied together and we end up having a great year and going to the College World Series when we didn't have as much talent as we had starting the season. It's like, well, how does that even work? And, we called it chemistry. No one knew exactly what that was. I erroneously thought it was a sports thing. I get my first job working for a tech company and I realized that's not a sports thing. That's a human thing.
Yeah. We're not just talking about team as a bunch of guys together, a bunch of people that got to be women or men, but we're talking about how they team as in how it works together.
Totally.
One unit.
Totally.
And that's what we're going to talk about today, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and that's what started me on this path. So, I worked for a couple of internet companies in the late 90s, .com bubble burst. I lose my job. And then I'm like, well, and a mentor of mine said, if you could do anything, what would you do? And I was like, well, I'd really love to speak and write and teach about, teams and culture and sort of how people come together. And he's like, well, you should do that. And I was like, okay. And that's how I started my business 25 years ago. Like there was no podcast or YouTube or Instagram or any of that. So anyway, long story short, like that's how I got into this. And for the last 25 years, you know, I've been speaking, writing, and working with teams in the construction industry, in all kinds of other industries, about how do we really create that environment where people can thrive, where we can have that strong culture and strong teams.
Now, I know you wrote 5 books. We'll get into those later. And the latest book is We're All in It Together. Yeah, I'm assuming that's kind of what we're going to talk about today as far as being that teamwork going. So how would my listeners, take what you teach and put it in their business, get that trust with their team members? Because I'm always talking about delegating. Yeah. And sometimes they stop delegating because they don't trust who they're giving it to.
Right.
And that's not always because of the person. It's because they haven't taught them how to do something either. So I'm going to let you speak a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, for everybody listening or watching, just think about the best team you've ever been on. And it may be a team you're currently on or you're currently leading, or it may be way back when you were in school or playing sports or earlier in your career. But if you think about the best team or teams you've been a part of, whenever I ask that question, I usually ask them the follow-up question, which is, what made that team so great? And usually what makes teams great, Chris, is trust, is caring about each other, is believing in each other, is having each other's backs, is having a mission and a purpose that we care about. It's all of this sort of intangible kind of soft, squishy stuff. It's not, usually people don't say skills and talent and like, oh, I was around the most talented people or everyone knew. I mean, yeah, that's part of it. You want, but we've all been part of teams where people are smart and talented and know what they're doing, but the team's not very good because people don't trust each other and people don't have each other's backs and people don't care about each other and there's no real mission or purpose. So the reason that it's important to think about that is like, we all want to have trust on our teams, but like, when's the meeting on trust? There's no meeting on trust, right? I mean, look, in the construction business, there's lots of meetings on pitching projects. There's safety meetings. There's all kinds of project meetings and where are we doing and how's we doing with the budget? But we don't have a meeting on how do we trust each other and how do we communicate with each other and how do we collaborate with each other and how do we make sure that we're actually working well together. And I know that sounds kind of strange, but like we just sort of hope it happens. And for a lot of your listeners and people listening to us and watching us, like being a leader is about finding creative ways to get people to connect and communicate and collaborate and resolve conflicts when they come up and find common ground with people who are different than they are. And those are easier said than done. So it's like, and they don't fit into the day-to-day activities that most of us do. There's not a meeting on the schedule or, you know, we look at the punch list of stuff that needs to get done. And it's not like, okay, bring the team together and make sure everybody's trusting each other and feeling good about the team. It's like, what are you talking about? But we have to figure out how to sprinkle that into how we lead and how we communicate.
Now, we're not just talking about guys standing up with their eyes closed and say, all right, lean back, we're going to catch you.
No.
And we're not talking about that. We're talking about bigger trust type things. I don't want anybody having in their minds those funny memes when they all fall to the floor. But it does have to do with some of that. I mean, that's a big picture of trust, but that's really what we're kind of talking about too, is trusting. I want to talk about, I wrote my little note here about responsibilities. Everybody knows what they're responsible for.
Yep.
I'm a big component of internal and external customers, meaning internal customers is, that could be the guy right next to you. He's waiting on you to make sure that you do something right.
Yep.
I'm with my guys today and we're looking at we're doing some remodeling and we're putting in countertops of an old building and it's not square, but the framer, if he done his job properly in a square and that countertop would fit just right. But now we got to go back and modify it.
Yep.
And those are type of internal, external things.
Yep.
Tell me how you said you don't really just have a real group meeting all of a sudden and say, hey, let's have a meeting on trust on why this isn't happening. How's that work in a real world situation?
I mean, look, it really is about, in an ongoing way, doing everything we can to build our relationships, both individually with people, but also facilitating that those conversations happen. Look, again, I don't pretend to be an expert on construction, although I've worked with a lot of construction companies over the years, but a lot of times I look at construction in the same way that I look at baseball. It's like, I was a pitcher. I didn't know how to be a catcher or a center fielder or a shortstop, right? I mean, I had played when I was in Little League, and even though I'm left-handed, I did play a little shortstop and catcher, but like, that wasn't my position on the team, but I had to understand and appreciate what everybody else on the team was doing And we have to understand that there are different skills and there are different challenges and there's different mindsets. And like, if I'm standing on the pitcher's mound and my catcher drops the ball or my shortstop makes an error or my center fielder gets a ball caught in the sun and can't see it, whatever, if I start yelling at him either on the field or in the dugout, or I, shrug my shoulders and I'm like rolling my eye, yeah, I want him to catch the ball. I want us, but like, we're all part of the same team and we're going to win or lose as a team.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, on a construction site or on a project, there's different people at different levels doing different things. And, as the CEO or someone in charge, maybe you've done a lot of those different jobs over the course of your career and you do know some things about it. But there's going to be someone maybe on the finance side or on the HR side, as your business gets bigger, you don't know how to do those things. That's not your area of expertise, but you still have to be a leader. And sometimes when I'm coaching a lot of CEOs in businesses, whether it's in construction or like right now, I'm coaching a CEO of a winery, and he comes from the sales side of the business, but he's got to manage all the people that are out actually,
growing the grapes. Yeah, or whatever.
Yeah, and he's not an agriculture guy, right? That's not his training, although he's been in the wine industry for all these years. But a lot of my coaching to him is like, how do you build relationships with all those guys that are out there working with the grapes? Because that's the bread and butter of the business, but you can't stand there and pretend to be an expert on it, but you still have to manage, you know what I mean? And so it's understanding it's the people side of the business that ultimately when you become a CEO or you're a leader, that's even more important than the skills side.
Do you have a technique that you put in place to help that? I've got one in my mind that I used to do.
What do you do for yourself and for other people that you talk to?
Management by walking around.
Yeah.
That sounds, and if nobody knows what that is, basically go out and make sure that they have an opportunity to talk to you.
Yep.
You listen to them, that it gains them respect, and respect and trust almost go side and side, I would think.
Yep.
And then basically be open with them. I mean, if they give you an idea, great.
Yep.
And if it's not a good one, and I'm not saying tell them it's an awful idea, tell them why it's not good.
Right.
That way they can think about, well, okay, that's how he thinks.
Yep.
Teach them how you think, how you see things. Because they're not a manager either. They're doing what they do, and you do what you do.
Yep.
And I do a lot of management walking around. I explain things. I even tell some of my people, especially in the staff area, I want you to assume you're right until I prove you wrong.
Okay, that's good.
That being said, I mean, I want them to be strong in their convictions.
Yeah.
And sometimes they can convince me I'm wrong. Show me a different way. It goes back and forth. And you talk about mirror. You ever heard the mirror effect, where you reflect what you get back?
Yeah.
If you show them respect, they're going to show you respect.
Absolutely.
So those are just some things I do.
I love that idea of management by walking around, because at the end of the day, it really does come down to, I mean, look, even in this, fast-paced technological world we live in, it's like human interaction, human connection, having conversations with people, whether it's in the office or on the job site. And really, to your point, connecting with them human to human, asking questions. I mean, sometimes the superficial, like, how you doing? How's the family? How was the weekend? That can seem, and it can be superficial, but what we're doing when we do that a lot of times, I mean, I work with a lot of companies in different industries, and what we learned over the last 5 or 6 years, where so many people now were working from home and working remotely, was like, we were missing some of that, what seemed like superficial interaction, but we realized, oh no, that stuff's important. Mm-hmm. Like knowing that, Susie's son has a little league game and Johnny's daughter is in a swim meet and whatever. I mean, like, that is part of your job as a leader, is to know those things and be aware of those things and what's important in people's lives. Right. And not that you have to be a psychologist or you're, fixing all that, but knowing if someone has a parent who's sick or a child who's going through something, I mean, that actually is part of it, because it is going to impact their work, and you having that awareness and that compassion is important. But also, to your point, being able to ask questions and have people challenge you, or even admit when you made a mistake or you saw something wrong. Hey, I didn't think of it that way. That's a good point. Let's do that. And you don't do it just to make them feel good. But the reality is, you're not going to have 100% of the right ideas.
No. And obviously the more heads are better than one, all that good stuff. But you mentioned Susie and Johnny. Call them by name.
Yes.
Now, granted, smaller groups, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But I used to run a corporate company and we had 150 people.
Yeah.
I might not know their last names, but I knew their first names.
Yeah.
And there were 3 different shifts. And not that you have, I mean, some commercial guys might be listening right now. You had different shifts that you don't always see them. I made a point at least once a month to make sure I went and saw them on the other shifts, and all that good stuff is ways to gain that respect, gain that trust.
And you can be, the thing is, I mean, a lot of my work really focuses, Chris, on authenticity, right? Being real, being genuine. Years ago, there's a construction company out here, a big construction company in the Bay Area called Webcore Builders, right? And they brought me in. I spoke at an event and one of their leaders was there and he came up to me and he said, "Hey, could you come in and teach our teams about communication and public speaking?" And I was like, "Well, in what context?" He said, "Well, we go and we're pitching jobs and we're pitching business." And he said, and my guys it was mostly guys, and he's like, they get nervous in the room, especially my superintendents and some of the guys who are used to being out on job sites, and now they got to be in the room with, building owners and architects and everyone in suits, and it's uncomfortable. And again, in this time, this is 20 some years ago. I'm sort of new in my career. I don't know much about construction. Anyway, I learn a bit. I interview some of these guys. I go in the room, and what I start to realize, and I said to them, "Look, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on what you do. I've never been in a meeting where a job's being pitched." I said, "But here's what I know. What resonates with people is authenticity." So if you, and I was speaking specifically to the superintendents, I was like, if you walk into this room and you put on clothes you normally don't wear, and you stand in a way you normally don't stand, and you try to talk in a certain way, I was like, don't do that. I mean, yeah, be mindful of the room that you're in, but be yourself. Like, they're wanting you to be yourself and speak from your own real experience and knowledge. Like, that goes a long way. And what I did over the course of a couple months with them, and it was also some of the, the senior executives as well, who, by the way, would also get nervous for different reasons in those meetings, even though they're all suited up and you'd think they're comfortable in the conference room. But the truth is, most people get nervous when they're public speaking or when they're pitching business, because you want the business and you don't know if they're going to say yes or not. And so anyway, the point of all that is that, again, wherever we find ourselves, it's like, just be real. That's what resonates with people. People trust you if you're genuine. And right, if you make a mistake or you screw something up or you forget someone's name or whatever, you can just say, "I'm so sorry, I forgot your name," or "I didn't do that." Whatever, you know what I mean? Like, that
Go
goes
to your, well, I don't want people call me BS on me. Am I perfect? No. But,
Yeah.
And did I remember everybody's name? No. But what I did was, if I come upon somebody, I saw them across the plant and I knew I wanted to go talk to them, but I could not remember their name. I just go ask, "Hey, what's their name?
Yeah.
Remind me, I forgot."
Yeah.
And sometimes you just go up and say, "Hey, man, I forgot. How you doing?" or whatever.
Right.
But find out before you go over there if you're concerned about that. And there's other techniques we won't get into today, but how to remember people's names and all that good stuff.
Yep.
But 9 times out of 10, the next time you see them, you're going to remember it because you already asked it.
Totally.
Now you put it in your brain. So
yeah.
But it means a lot when you go up and say, "Hey, Joe, how you doing?" And they think, "You know my name."
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, "Hey, play the game." And it is a game in a way. It's always a game, just different players, different situations.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. And look, I mean, in our relationship, look, you're not going to like everybody. Not everybody on a team or on a job is going to necessarily be best friends with each other. But there's a way, like, it's about human connection. One example I often use on the importance of empathy and human connection, even when we're in tense situations. When you're stuck in traffic, if you're on traffic and you're on the freeway and it's bumper to bumper and people are trying to merge in, if you do not want to let the person merge in, what do? You don't look at them, right? You get close as you can, but you ignore them. You stay straight ahead, because the moment you turn to look at that person over there, unless they're screaming at you and flipping you off, you're going to let them in, right? Because you
feel bad. It's like, the connection's now. Like,
you look at them, you look in their eyes and they're like, "Let me in, please." And because you've been the person out there trying to merge in when no one will let you in. And so again, and you let them in and hopefully they wave and you wave, and it's just one person, not all 10 of them. But that's an example of, you'll never see that person again in your life, but it's a tense situation. There's some conflict there. But as soon as you make that human connection, you realize, okay, look, we're all in this thing together. We're all stuck in this traffic jam. We're trying to get through. The same is true, I think, sometimes on our teams. Now, granted, when you have a conflict with another person, or you have a real personality difference, or that person gets on our nerves, or they've rubbed us the wrong way a dozen times, it's harder. But at some level, it is really important to remember, wait, we're human beings trying the best we can, trying to accomplish something important. And maybe we have different ways of going about it. But this is also part of leadership, is how do you intervene when there's a conflict, either a conflict you have with someone else, or you're trying to mediate or facilitate a conflict. And it's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's really about, can we find common ground and can we move forward together? Because this conflict, if we don't resolve it, is actually going to take both of us and potentially more people down in the process.
It reminds me of a conflict I resolved when somebody come in. Oh, there was 2 managers, both same level as far as, and they were butting heads about their departments.
Yep.
And I got tired of people telling me about it. So I called them in. I said, y'all manage your departments, right? Yep. Both managers? Yes. So I reached in my pocket, grabbed my credit card. I gave it to one of them. I said, y'all go have lunch. And you don't come back till y'all resolve this. I don't want to hear it again. And they come back all cheery, happy.
Nice.
They just needed time to talk and really hash out what was going on, knowing that I wasn't going to let them. That's not going to happen. I can't have conflict between my departments. Y'all got to work together, make it happen.
That's great. And that's a great, I mean, you challenged them, but empowered them to work it out, which is always the best if you can. And I had a mentor years ago, Chris, say this thing to me that I never forgot. He said, Mike, you know what stands between you and the kind of relationships you really want to have with people? I said, what's that? He said, it's usually a 10-minute sweaty palm conversation you're too afraid to have.
Exactly.
He's like, if you have those 10-minute sweaty palm conversations, you'll resolve conflicts, you'll work stuff out, you'll get to know people who are different than you, you'll talk about sensitive topics, you'll move through things, you'll give feedback, you'll get feedback. He said, if you do like most of us, though, and you avoid those conversations because they can be awkward or uncomfortable, he goes, then things just build up and, you know, you sort of end up being a victim of who you work with, who you live with. But to your point of giving the credit card to those guys, it's like, hey, go work it out. You know, talk amongst yourselves, figure this thing out. Like, we got more important things to deal with.
I'm not getting into it. I'm not getting in the middle of it. I don't care.
Yeah.
I want y'all doing your job. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think back to your question earlier too, of what do I recommend? I mean, from time to time, it is important, I think, though, if you do pull the team together, you know, look, it's not every day, it's not every week, but it's like, is there a time when you can pull the team together? Maybe it's your leadership team, maybe it's the whole team on a project, or how, depending on how big the project or the company is. But, you know, putting a little bit of attention on the health of the team, talking about the team, that is an important, I mean, look, I get invited in a lot of times to speak at events or to go to an offsite of some kind when a team is getting together. And they're talking about business and goals and strategy, but they're also going to spend a little bit of time, hopefully, especially if they bring me in, to talk about the team and how do we collaborate? How do we communicate? How do we resolve conflicts? How do we make sure we're working well together? Because sometimes, I mean, even when things are going well, Chris, with a company, it's like the company's growing, there's more business, there's more projects. That can be just as stressful as if, you know, business is down. We're like having a hard time keeping up, you know? Yeah.
How do you keep the customers you have and want more? And then everybody's wanting the same thing somehow. And it's just, you're right. It's as stressful as not having any.
Yeah.
I mentioned one other day, we're talking about money. You can have a problem with too much money and not enough money. Now, I like the idea of having the problem with too much money.
Yes.
But problems are problems, and you're going to have them no matter where you're at.
Yeah,
so
for sure. And that's the thing too, I think, dealing with, how do we deal with stress? How do we deal with challenge? How do we deal with change, uncertainty? Like, those are present all the time. Sometimes when things are going great, sometimes when things aren't going great, but like learning how you as a leader and your team collectively function when things are changing or they're stressful or they're uncertain. It's important to think about and talk about, even if, you know, we're not in the midst of an incredibly stressful time, because, you know, a friend of mine likes to say, in life, we're usually either in the middle of a storm, about to go into a storm, or just coming out of one. So
do you talk much about training when it comes to leadership?
Training? Yeah. I think it's really important. I mean, again, there's different ways to do it these days. I mean, for better or worse, there's a lot of online training. There's a lot of books and courses we can do that way. I think still old school, kind of in person, you know, having what I find that's really helpful about some types of training, even if it's pretty simple, is if you take a methodology and have everybody get trained in it, then there's a common language that everyone has, right? It's like, hey, we all know, when this is what we mean. We're talking about communication. We're talking about leadership. We're talking about trust in these certain ways. You know, and like in my book, we're all in this together. Like, I try to lay out a couple specific things that, you know, teams can do and leaders can do. Again, so there's some common language, but there's a lot of good stuff out there. And just like you all need, you know this better than I do in your industry, people need a lot of technical training and safety training so they can be good and so people don't get hurt. We also need more of that soft skills training on leadership, on communication, on, you know, teamwork and trust.
Also with the teamwork part and actually the training too, everybody has a clear understanding of what they're responsible for.
Yep.
I didn't tell you much about my business, but I have a contract construction business, and I have Amish crews. And it's amazing how they all know what they're doing, and they don't have to ask. Yeah. And I'm sure it's from their upbringing. And
right.
Just, you know, they have these places where they go build houses together. Okay. And everybody has a, you know, or even barns. So have a barn raising, but everybody knows what's going on. they have one leader and they're in charge. Even when they go to a group family function, somebody is in charge of everybody else. It's amazing. But the point being is that the responsibility, everybody knows what they're responsible for. They don't have to go and it's a well-oiled machine for that matter. They don't have to be Amish to do that. I've seen that in other companies too. But the point being is that everybody knows, and there's no there's no reason to have conflict because everybody's doing what they're supposed to do and nobody's worried about the other.
Yeah.
So
that's good. Well, I mean, I think clear roles and responsibilities is super important. So again, who's in charge, who does what's the chain of command, all that stuff. I mean, you want there to be that give and take, that two-way communication you were talking about earlier, kind of managed by walking around. And at the same time, it's super helpful. Again, back to baseball, even if you're not a baseball fan, it's like if all of a sudden the second baseman's trying to play first base and the first baseman's trying to play left field, now we're like, what are we doing?
Yeah,
it's chaos.
Yeah. It's a whole different, I'm not much, but I'm assuming there's a different strategy for each position, really?
Yeah.
Different
strategies, different skills, different responsibilities, different things you got to pay attention to. When the ball gets hit to left field, everybody has to rotate around,
move at different spots, and
exactly. I mean, think of it in football. It's like on the defense. If everyone all of a sudden is lined up on the left side, the right side's wide open, they're going to score every time.
Exactly.
It's like, we got to play our position and know where we're supposed to be.
I did play football, but even my grandson's little league, the left. Right fieldman always backs up the first baseman. It's just like go back them up. That's what you do.
Exactly.
Ball, that's your job. If it's not coming to you, going somewhere else. That's what you do.
Yeah.
But as a leader and CEO, obviously, ultimately, if you're a CEO, I want you to hire a leader to manage your company for you, so you can go other things. But as a leader, it's your responsibility to make sure those people know what they're responsible for.
Yeah.
And in theory, once you've done it once and you have standard operating procedures, all that good stuff, and you're doing your right training, it sounds overwhelming right now, especially if you're starting out.
Right.
And we have the advantages of AI and the internet that Mike and I didn't have a long time ago. And
exactly.
But some of that stuff's already done for you. And there's books out there for it. Well, let's talk about books. Let's talk about all in this together.
Yeah.
What's the main theme of the book?
I mean, look, the main idea is that on teams that really thrive, it's important to have a mentality of like, there's no them, it's all us. And to your point earlier, your two guys, the two department heads that were fighting with each other, like that happens. Human beings have conflicts, but it's like, hey, it's not department A against department B, because if it is, we're all going to lose. We got to get on the same page. And in the book, I lay out kind of 4 pillars. The first one being creating psychological safety, which is really about group trust. The second one is about creating a sense of inclusion, so everyone feels like they're part of it, that we all belong and we're included, which is easier said than done. And that's why if you're in a leadership position, it's important, especially people who are newer or younger or maybe different in whatever way, that we're doing everything we can to make sure people feel like they're included, they're part of the team. The third thing is about embracing those sweaty palm conversations that I was talking about earlier. And then the fourth thing is really about having a culture where we both expect a lot and we care a lot. So we both challenge people, right? But at the same time, we care about people, because those two things at the same time, most cultures is kind of one or the other. There's a lot of pushing and challenging and like high bar and high, but not a lot of caring and nurturing, or there's a lot of caring and nurturing and it's all warm and fuzzy, but we don't push people to be their best. And the best environments, the most high performing teams do both. They care and they challenge at the same time.
You just reminded me of something. And some of my guys were thinking, well, I don't have departments in my business because I'm too small.
Right.
Well, think of it like this. Because I come in and they put me in charge and I straighten all this out. But I have, let's say, one person doing something and they pass it on to another person. And then that person would check to make sure it was right before they used it.
Right.
Well, that's a waste of time.
Right.
Because you should trust. And for example, so if you guys are shooting houses, for example, and you got a guy up on top and he's yelling measurements down to the bottom, you got a cut man, the man's cutting the board. Do you measure that before you put it into place? Because if you are, then you're wasting time and your cut man's not right.
Right.
Or you're measuring it wrong. There's something going on. But the point being is, once they've cut it and they give it to you, you use it and go on. That's the most efficient way.
Yeah.
So that you trusted that person knew what he was doing and cut that board correctly.
Yes.
Is there going to be mistakes? Yes, that happens. But if you're working as a team, you're depending on everybody doing what they're supposed to do.
Absolutely. Look, and to your point, if it's a small team or a small business and we've got just a handful of people on a project or in the whole company, there aren't going to be big departments. A lot of people are going to wear multiple hats.
Absolutely.
We're going to have to work together. The thing, though, there's a distinction that I make in the book and that I talk a lot about to teams, and it's the distinction between our job and our role. We use those words interchangeably, but I like to think of them as different. So our role is what we do. So to your point, in that scenario, there's a cut man or there's someone doing this or that. We each have specific, and it's important, as we've been talking about, everyone knows what their role is. Everyone focuses on their role so the team can function well together. But on a high-performing team, on a team that really wins and thrives, whether we're talking about a whole company or a project team or any kind of team, everyone knows that we actually all have the same job, and that's to help the team win. Meaning that we understand what the ultimate goal is. Everyone knows their part they're going to play. But if we put our role above our job, then we're more interested in what about me and how do I look and am I getting credit? And, which again, we all have egos. We all want to do well. But like back when I was playing baseball, Chris, I was a pitcher and I preferred to be a starting pitcher as opposed to a relief pitcher for a bunch of reasons. The starting pitcher is a little more prestigious and sexy, but also for me, it was
less
more
stress, isn't it?
Less stress. I know when I was pitching, it was my night. I could get ready mentally and physically. When you're a reliever, you're down in the bullpen, game gets crazy. It's, bases loaded in the 7th inning. You got to come in and try to get out of the jam.
They're like calling you with the jam.
The margin for error is very small. And I found that stressful. I didn't like that. Some guys that I played with actually preferred
thrived
that.
on it. Yeah.
They thrived on it. But so sometimes my manager would decide that I was in the bullpen instead of starting. And when I sometimes would go down to the bullpen, I would be pouting, and sometimes I'd keep it to myself, but sometimes I even say it out loud, like, how come Chris is starting and I'm not? Like, I'm better than him and whatever. And in those moments when I was doing a very normal, natural, human, egoic thing of being mad that I don't like my role, I was actually not doing my job. I'm not helping the team win if I'm rooting against my teammates. Even though in a practical sense, if you're starting and I'm not and you screw up, I might get to pitch. And if you keep screwing up, I might get my starting job back. That makes sense. We can all understand that. But if we're going to have a high-performing team, we're not going to have a high-performing team where people are rooting against.
We need you for backup in case something goes wrong.
Yeah, and sometimes we don't love the role that we have, or we, and that's okay. You want people on your team to be ambitious, to want to be promoted, to want to, but all of us in life, even if you're a CEO, even if you've gotten to a certain level and you want the company to be more successful, or we got to also accept where we are and simultaneously have that healthy ambition for where we want to go. And so this goes back to leadership. Can you create an environment where it's okay for people to want to, continue to move along in their own personal career, but at the same time, make sure that everyone knows this is what we're trying to accomplish right now on this project with this customer for this business. And I always say to people, like, the way you get the next job is be really good at the job that you have.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's how you're ultimately going to get promoted in whatever environment you find yourself in.
Getting close to the end, but before I go, I want to hear some stories. You got any turnaround stories that you come in, I give them names, but you come into they called you in, or not even for baseball, but they called you into a business.
Yep.
Oh, these guys got some problems and you got it straightened out. And now it's like, whoa.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a company, when you mentioned that, there's a commercial real estate company that I worked with several years ago, and they had basically split up. It was one company, and then the two partners kind of split. And so it was all this acrimony as kind of some people went with one and other, this happens, right?
Be sure.
And so the one company I was working with of the split, they were just trying to find themselves. And there was a lot of comparing to how it used to be and missing some of the old this and that. And I worked with them over the span of about a year, actually. And what they did really wonderfully, because they were struggling and trying to find their own identity, was they actually went through a process where they really set up a different set of core values than they'd had from the previous company and established themselves like, who are we? Not in reaction to what used to be, but now, like, if wipe the slate clean and imagine it could be anything, what would it be? And they had a really great, strong leader, but a lot of the people and some of the more junior folks from the previous company had come over to this one. They had to step up into more leadership. And it was like having authentic conversations about some of their frustrations or their fears, but then really setting up their core values and then starting to live into those core values and go hire people who were interested in doing what they were doing. I mean, they're incredibly successful now and have grown exponentially since I worked with them, but I've stayed in touch with them. But they really did the work and set up, like, how do we want the culture of this company to be, not just focus so much on the results?
That is an excellent example. And so if you're listening right now, I want you to think about this. I want you to write down your values. Think about what those are. Okay. And share them with your team and see. I'm not saying fire them, but either they can say, hey, you got to agree with it's your business. This is how you want it to be run. You want this, how you want people treated internally and externally. Hey, this is my core values. Do you all agree with this? And if if your team's good or not, they're going to say, yes, I agree with those. You're also going to have those who don't. And over time, they'll weed themselves out. But more importantly, when you grow your business and you're hiring new people, show them those values before they come on. Here's what we value in our company. Do you agree with this? Yes or no? And you'll weed out some people automatically just that way. They'll weed themselves out as an opportunity to come onto your business, or you'll just know that they're not. If you use that as a gauge, it'll help you grow your business with a good team.
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice.
Well, that all being said, Mike, you have any closing comments before we go?
I mean, I think one thing that I would say to everyone who's listening to us or watching us, Chris, like we've been talking a lot about teams and trust and managing and leading and all of that. And what I find the best leaders that I work with, Chris, who ultimately create the best teams, are also willing to do some of their own kind of introspection and telling the truth. I mean, like you said earlier, no one's perfect. It's okay to have some blind spots or some challenges, but if we're constantly learning and growing, that's going to help the team learn and grow, and that's going to put us in the most authentic space to be able to lead the team in the direction we want to.
Awesome. Down in the show notes, we're going to put a link to Mike and to his new book, all in this together. Mike, thank you for today. It's been a great time. Also in the show notes, you'll get a link to me if you want to talk and have a free consultation, and that'll be in the link below. Mike, I'm glad you're there. You're all the way in California, and I failed to say that. I think you mentioned it earlier. Yeah. Is it San Francisco? Is it warm over there right now?
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Right about the middle. Good. I love San Diego. Sorry, but it's beautiful. But that being said, everybody, I'll see you again next time on the Hard Hat CEO. Bye-bye.